Hello, everybody, and welcome to Making the Argument. I'm your host, Nick Freitas, but today we have a special guest. We're going to talk about a couple of things. Now, listen, anybody that's been following me for a while knows that I don't generally consort with Marines because I just, I don't have the same crayon fetish. But every once in a while, you come across one that just seems to be a genuinely great guy. And Kagan Dunlap is someone that this guy's channel kept popping up in my feed over and over again because he would have really, really interesting takes on things from the military, foreign policy, domestic policy. Again, I knew I liked his content, funny guy. In fact, one of my favorite posts, he has got this, it is quite possibly one of the greatest couple posts I think I've ever seen, where he is dressed up in those Marine dress blues that all the other services are envious of. I'll admit it. As a proud Army guy, I'll admit it. We're all and his wife is there too. They're at a Marine Corps ball, dressed to the nines, and they've just got they are loaded, kitted up, and it just looks awesome. So, Kagan, thank you very much for being on the podcast, brother.
Hey man, I really appreciate you inviting me on. I mean, you're a huge deal. So I was very grateful that you're like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? I was like, yep, me? You want to talk to me?
No, dude.
So, yeah,
dude,
thank you, man.
No, you've done some great work, and I got to say recently, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, more in depth. But the work that you've done with respect to supporting victims of Hurricane Helene has been really incredible, really incredible. Like, it was just constantly coming. You dedicated a lot of time to making sure that people knew where resources were needed, using your platform for that purpose, but then also going out there and actually working with some other good groups and some mutual friends we have with Tim Kennedy and others. But before we get to that, tell everybody just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I've my background is an interesting one. So I was kind of like I'm originally from Maine. Spent 11 years up there and moved down south in 1998 down to a place called New Bern, North Carolina. Lived in New Bern for 4 years. Then I moved to Fayetteville for 4 years. I don't know if you ever spent any time in Fayetteville.
Oh, yes.
Spent some time there. Yeah. So I was there for a little bit, and then I went out to the mountains, moved to Hendersonville, North Carolina in 2006, lived there until 2008. And then I moved to Asheville and lived in Asheville for about 6-7 years while I was going to Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College, which is where I got my associate's degree. So that's kind of like where my background of why I feel like the mountains is like home for me, because I lived there for a period of time. I plan on retiring there when I get out. And then, 2014, it took me about 7 years to get into the military because I was kind of a troubled youth. You know what I mean? And then finally got in 2014. Well, 2013 is when I actually signed the paperwork and then got the waiver right after the government shut down that October, and went off to recruit training that May. And then I've been in the Marine Corps ever since. So I was enlisted for my first 5 years. I was out in Hawaii in 3rd Marine Division. I was an anti-tank missile man. So I was a tow gunner out there in the infantry for about 5 years. And then I got selected for an EDO program, which is unbelievable considering like it took me 7 years to get in the first place. And then went through the pipeline for that. I finished college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill for a couple years from 2019 till 2021. And then I commissioned after the end of the program. Went to the basic school in Quantico, Virginia for about 7 months. And then I came down to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So now I'm in a different MOS because it's a little easier on my body. I'm doing supply chain management and logistics related stuff now instead of infantry stuff, grunt stuff, because my spine and my joints aren't as good as they used to be. So it's probably better for me. I'm almost 38. So, but yeah, I've been doing that. And then, a lot of my content has changed a lot, man. Like, it started off kind of like just reposting videos of military related stuff. Cause I've always, I just have a fascination with like learning about like military technology, military history, weapon systems, foreign militaries, foreign weapon systems, foreign armor vehicles and stuff like that. And then it slowly kind of transitioned to being more like, I like to do a lot of commentary stuff because I like talking to people. I like talking about things. I like being informed about current events and current affairs. And I think it's beneficial to people in our community specifically to be informed on that kind of stuff, especially since that's going to directly impact where you could potentially go.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff is fascinating and interesting to me. And so that's kind of how it's shifted. a lot. But I the big reason I got into social media probably was and this is a short story dating back to 2022, the Uvalde, Texas shooting. You remember
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
So when that happened, I don't know what was happening. I just happened to be scrolling through Facebook, and I ran across a GoFundMe for a Marine who lost both of his parents around the same time. Like his mother was one of the school teachers
Oh,
that
wow.
lost her life tragically in that. And then his father died, I believe, from heart failure or some sort of thing after that the same week. So this Marine lost both of his parents within 1 week. And they had a GoFundMe for the family to help them out because obviously they aren't covered by they're not covered by like like life
Yeah,
insurance, like
SGLI
the
and stuff.
SGLI
Yeah.
and anything like that. Yeah. And so I basically had some connections with folks that were in the social media spaces, and I sent it out to like 50, 60 people to just try to get the word out about it. And I don't know if it was because of me or if it was because of these bigger platforms that shared it, but I watched the GoFundMe go up by like a couple $100,000 within one day. And I realized right then, I was like, I need to build a platform
Yeah.
so that I can do this myself without having to depend on other people, because like that's powerful. You can directly impact the quality and of somebody's life, and have a positive impact on people. And so that's kind of like where I started this whole journey. Is I want to be able to build a platform that I can use to do good with,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be for the military or veteran community and raising awareness about things that are important to us, or whether it be just for doing some good out there, maybe filling in the gaps where they're not filled in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the short and skinny of it.
Well, and you've done a great job, man. I mean, you're almost at like 800K on Instagram, and I know you're on other platforms as well. And I'm always encouraged by people that when they see something going on, because I do believe that we live in a culture, and I know you also have to be careful because you're still actively in the military, but we do have a culture that seems more and more to think that when there's a problem, it's like, well, that's the government's job. Why isn't the government doing their job? Why aren't they fixing this? And we need more people that say, no, look, we we have the capability and the capacity to help one another, and living in a free society means we do take responsibility both for ourselves, but also for our family, for people that we care about. We come alongside and we help one another. And so I appreciate you seeing an opportunity in that and building it up. I mean, yeah. So, it's interesting. At one point, you were a good salt of the earth enlisted man, and then you crossed over to the dark side to become an officer. I get it. I get it. I stayed enlisted the way God intended, but that's okay. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, right?
Well, I thought to myself, I can have a real impact on people. I can have a real positive impact on people in this space. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like what kept me in. I told myself if I didn't make it into this program, I was going to get out.
Yeah.
Just because the whole reason I was staying in was because I wanted to be able to like help people and have a positive impact on like my immediate sphere of influence. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about a family.
So I don't have any kids currently. I probably wouldn't be able to spend the ungodly amounts of time on the internet as I do if I did have kids. But I am married to a woman in the Coast Guard. Her name is Riley. She's a E6 in the Coast Guard. She works at the Law Enforcement Training Academy down in Charleston right now. So she's stationed in Charleston. I'm stationed in Camp Lejeune.
Oh,
So we're
that's
kind of
rough.
like, yeah, doing the back and forth. She's been the one who's been doing most of the work as far as like driving back and forth on the weekends because we've got a house here. And it's just she wants to come home to the house,
Yeah.
not like have me come down to her apartment down there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of plus we got our two cats here. You probably see them like running around in the background at some
Yeah.
point. But so that's kind of like our family, right? It's just like our cats and my wife. And I mean, we do have like our close relatives, like my parents. One of my parents lives in Virginia. My mother lives in South Carolina, and then I have two brothers. One of my brothers goes to Western Carolina University in Cullowhee, out in like just west of Waynesville, like
Yeah.
kind of west of Asheville, and then my other brother lives in near Charlotte. So they're both in North Carolina, so I can see both of them, much easier now than when I was in Hawaii for sure. But her family's a little bit further away. They're in like West Virginia. They're
Sure.
like up close to Pittsburgh in West Virginia.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, a little bit more difficult. But she's from Baltimore originally. So she's a tough lady. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of keeps me in line. And I think, and you talk about it a lot. You do a really good job. I always tell everybody, like when I talk about you, if they've never heard of you, like I was like, if I had to summarize it based on what I like limited information I know, I was like, this guy has a lot of like he talks about a lot about family,
Mm,
a lot about family values, like talk a lot about raising children, a lot about relationships with your wife, a lot about like good, honest, moral values for a family man. If I
mm,
had to summarize it, and that stuff is extremely beneficial and needed in
mm.
today's day and age, as you well know. And I think that's huge too. So like my hat goes off to you for that because there's not a lot of folks out there doing that kind of stuff.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Well, look, you built this platform in part so that you could have a positive effect, that you could help people at the point of impact, right? And I mean, obviously, North Carolina is a special place for you. You've lived in a lot of the areas that have been most impacted by what happened with Hurricane Helene. And as much as I've enjoyed all of your content, the part that I just really just thought was incredible was how when Helene happened and the devastation that took place that I don't think anybody was really anticipating, and all of a sudden this became a problem for securing resources and getting it to where it needed to go, and trying to get information about what was really going on. Um, I mean, you just took it's like you took that entire platform and you pointed it at that problem, and then you coordinated. And I mean, again, you're working on supply chain management now, right? You were able to get people into contact with where the need was greatest at the time it was needed. But you also, again, you physically went out there as well. So if you could, can you kind of give us an update on, like, no kidding, what is going on the ground, and what it has been like working with some of the organizations you have in order to try to get people help?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been an evolving situation. Man, I'll tell you, when I first found out how significant it was, because I didn't know either. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, they got hit by hurricane, whatever. I didn't realize that there was like hundreds of mudslides and like
Yeah.
all these rivers ripped out all these towns that I used to hang out in and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, I have a lot of friends that live up there, so a lot of them I was reaching out to everybody, calling all my friends that still lived around Asheville, like, obviously talked to my brother. Fortunately, my brother works at the Harrah's Cherokee Casino Hotel, and, like, they had internet at the time, even
Mhm.
during, like, the thick of it. So he would go to work, and he would get on the Wi-Fi and, like, be able to call me and talk to me about, like, everything that was going on. Like, the whole Harrah's Cherokee, Casino Hotel turned into, like, almost like a refuge for everybody that didn't have power or didn't have internet or anything. Like, people were going there like in droves. He said he's never seen it that packed before. People were like staying in the hotel,
Yeah.
going out to eat there because there's nothing anywhere else. Um, but it changed so rapidly. I mean, obviously in the beginning when it was happening, I was in Atlanta for the military influencer conference. I was down there with my wife, and then my brother ended up meeting us in Atlanta and actually evacuated to go to Wisconsin to go stay with his girlfriend for a week while things kind of cooled down because
Yeah.
like they lost power and lost water, like the water main out in Cullowhee blew or something. And it was just crazy. And I was talking to Tim. Actually, I FaceTimed Tim while he was down there
Tim
in
Kennedy.
West Asheville. Yeah. And I was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" Because I didn't know he was there, and I saw a video pop up in my feed. I was like, "Oh, dude, you're out there right now? Like, I'm from there. What's going on? Like, what's happening out there?" And like, it was pretty bad in the first few days because like obviously the federal government takes a lot longer to mobilize and get everything together than like your neighbor and you,
Mhm.
right? Like you were
Mhm.
saying, taking care of each other kind of stuff that can happen much more rapidly because the bureaucracy of the federal government is very hard to navigate, especially when it comes to like sending like Title 10 troops somewhere
Yeah.
like stateside to do stuff. So in the beginning, obviously, it was like, okay, I was all about food and water and search and rescue because there was tons of people that were like separated from society. The roads were washed out. Like there was tons of people that lost their homes. Lots of people were, I mean, lots of people were in some serious dire situations. And I heard a podcast. I listened to Sean Ryan's podcast. He had a couple guys on there that were doing search and rescue as well. And it was really bad in the beginning. Like all these old ladies that didn't have access to oxygen, babies somehow that had gotten some separated from their family, all kinds of insane stuff. And I was so splintered the whole time I was in Atlanta to be at this conference. I was supposed to be like networking and talking with people,
Yeah.
but all I could worry about was like what was happening in North Carolina because it was so devastating. Like, and so many people were displaced and so many people were homeless all of a sudden. And like, There was no food, there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no internet. Nobody could talk to each other. Like my brother said that there's like people, you would see like these large chains of cars on the side of the road on the interstate, just trying to find little patches where there happened to be like one or two bars so they could call their families to let them know they were alive and okay. And it just like, it was totally insane. And then you had some looting and some like armed people going around doing some nefarious things like that, like would always happen in a situation like this. And then obviously as the time passed and, a week went by and then like the needs changed a little bit because a lot of the folks that were going to be rescued or were, could be rescued
Yeah.
were rescued. And then by the time I got out there, it had been nearly 2 weeks already, which sucks because I couldn't get out there sooner, but this was the soonest I was able to go. So I was like, I need to go now as soon as I was able to get a chance. And fortunately, my chain of command was very supportive of me. And we raised like, I think I started a GoFundMe and like a fundraiser on Instagram. And we raised over $40,000 for a organization in Waynesville called Mountain Projects. And I actually went out there and visited them while I was out there to let them know, hey, I'm a real person. I'm not trying to like scam people. Like
Yeah.
I actually have like, I've raised a bunch of money for you guys. And I'm going to make sure it gets to you. Like, here's my contact information. Call me if you have any problems, kind of thing. And I talked to the lady that's like in charge out there. And so that was good. But when by the time I was finally able to get up there, like I said, the needs had changed significantly because it was starting to get colder and there was a relatively stable supply of food and water most places.
Yeah.
But it had shifted to like cold weather gear, generators, making sure people had electricity because there's a lot of places that are still out of power currently. Like for example, I have a buddy of mine, Sean Hendricks, who's been like, he's been crushing it. Like he went out there and dropped like, I think 30 plus Starlinks to different places like fire stations and police departments and small fire departments.
Yeah, with Mr. Beast.
Yeah. And he's up there right now. Actually, he's in Banner Elk. He went back up there to Banner Elk because they're in a rough shape. They're a rough spot right now as well.
He was up here this last weekend. We were having the Homesteaders of America conference, and I got to meet Sean and talk to him a little bit. Great guy.
Good. I'm glad you guys linked up. I was like, dude, I'm going to text him. I'll let him know you're going to be there,
that's
man.
Right. You texted me and I saw him like, wait, you're Sean. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great dude, man. He's been like breaking his back, going back and forth between Greenville and the mountains to just bring supplies, like tons and tons of stuff up there. He's been crushing it. He was in Banner Elk this like last night and he showed like pictures and video. It snowed up there last night.
And so much of this, when people hear a hurricane hitting, North Carolina, they're thinking the coast. They're not thinking the mountains. And it's been, I think 1969 was the last time they had anything close to this, and it was devastating then. And this one was even worse. So gosh, it was just incredible. But let me ask you this: what do you think? I mean, I was watching a lot of stuff from Tim Kennedy, and Tim was very frustrated by some of the federal response with things. And Tim is definitely like a go-to guy, former Green Beret. For those who don't know, former Green Beret, former UFC fighter, great guy. Also does a lot of work with his good friend Matt Boudreau, who lives in that part of the country, and they do a lot through their Apogee program with education and youth. Do you think that to some degree, this kind of serves as, because at the same time that there was frustration with respect to federal bureaucracy, and federal bureaucracy is what it is. Bureaucracy is what it is. Yeah. Do you think that to some degree it woke people up to the idea that, look, you can have all the agencies you want. You can have all of the, the funding for those agencies you want. And again, it's a whole nother conversation about how some of those funds have been used and where the priority has gone. And I think a lot of very, very justified frustration with that. But to some degree, do you think that there was value in the sense that a lot of people learned, like, look, we can't be depending on that, and we need more organizations like Save Our Allies, like Samaritan's Purse, like these other groups that, like you stopped what you're doing and you pointed your platform toward a particular problem where you could help coordinate resources. Tim stopped what he was doing, went out there and started providing, support and supplies. Save Our Allies, Save Our Allies has got a lot of focus that it's doing in things, all over the world, not just in the United States, but it was like, nope, the need's here. Let's move. Do you think that there was any benefit to the idea, while the frustration with government is justified, the value of people realizing that, you know what, we don't got to sit around and wait for permission to go help people out? Do you think there was any value in that?
Yeah, I would say the value there is probably immeasurable. And I was talking to Sean about this as well. Like, he's trying to get something set up where it's like, he can have like a task force everywhere in the country where, like, a natural disaster happens and then they can go in there and be like a stopgap to kind of like fill the gap and do that immediate, like, not like 48 hours to 96 hours aid and assistance stuff.
Yeah.
Before the federal government gets its wheels spinning to get out there. And then once the government gets out there, then they can leave. I think there's a lot of organizations that are doing that. I know Operation Airdrop. I think it was Operation Airdrop, and a couple other organizations like that. Like, we're out there from across the country providing aid, doing search and rescue, doing a lot of immediate, like, needed right now type assistance that kind of like filled the gap. So that way, things were like managed at the local level until the federal government was able to kind of like get through that bureaucracy to get out there, or even the state guard and stuff like that. Because once like the state guard and the federal troops are able to deploy somewhere to like start helping, they do a good job. Like, everybody I talked to, they were like crushing it. Like, the 101st Airborne was out there shoveling mud out of people's houses. I interviewed a couple guys in the 101st Airborne in Chimney Rock, actually, and they were crushing it out there, man. They were like taking all the trash out, all like gutting all the houses for them, shoveling mud, like cleaning the streets up, like bulldozing stuff. They were crushing it. Same thing with the 82nd Airborne. The 82nd was like doing a bunch of supply drops and also cleaning out homes and cleaning out businesses. So once they get there, like, those guys want to help too. Like, they didn't join the army or join the military to just like sit around and train. Like, they want to have an impact on people. And what better way to have an impact on people than your own American citizens? And I genuinely believe that not only that, but also like the communities coming together to like help each other and like build these like little supply chain systems.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the founding fathers would be very proud of, because I think that was kind of what they intended, is that, we, the people, take care of ourselves and take care of your neighbor and take care of each other, especially in times of need like this, because they didn't want us to necessarily depend on the federal government for everything. Right.
No, I think that, well, and you read things like Democracy in America, which was written by Alexis de Tocqueville. And I think he was visiting the United States in the 1830s. And one of the things that he commented on that just shocked him was that in American communities, especially in American rural communities, they would form sometimes permanent, sometimes temporary associations in order to deal with problems. Like, it didn't even occur to people that you were waiting around for Washington, D.C. to do something, or your state capital to do something. It was always this, well, no, of course we would do this. And it might be members of the local, the militia was obviously not only a law enforcement organization, but it was also something that was utilized in times of natural disasters and things like that in order to address issues. And then you had other voluntary associations that they would set up to do the things that needed to be done. Right. And I feel like it built, you listen to Alexis de Tocqueville write about as a visiting Frenchman, and he's just fascinated by this idea that, well, in Europe, it's like, well, when's the government going to get here? Or when's the Lord going to take care of this? The local feudal lord going to take care of X, Y, or Z? Whereas in the United States, there was this natural idea that no, we as a community take care of our problems. And so it was this sense of rugged individualism combined with a really, really strong sense of community. And, to your point, when something happens, a natural disaster, whatever it might be, the quicker that people know how to react and can bring resources to bear, the better. And yeah, the state resources, the state's going to have more resources. The federal government's going to have more resources than what you might have at the local level. But sometimes the resources in the right place at the right time can actually do the most to prevent, a lot of, horrible things or tragedies from taking place just by being there and knowing what to do. Do you think, as Tim talks about putting this together, do you think there's, well, let's just say in North Carolina specifically, do you think there will be more of a drive for people to kind of form those voluntary associations? Or do you think this will kind of go back into, okay, well, we need to improve our government systems? Or do you think it's going to be, no, we may need to improve government systems, but that is not that is not who should be exclusively responsible for handling something like this.
Yeah. No, there's been a lot of different organizations that I came into contact with out there that for sure have developed like a serious community. I know some guys that founded their own nonprofits out of this thing. Like, I was in Marshall, North Carolina on Monday before I drove back, and they started an entire nonprofit from this supply hub that they have staged up there, and they've got people volunteering from all over the country to come down and help out to clean up Marshall, which was devastated. Like every single first floor of every building of the entire town is totally ruined and gutted, and all the drywalls ripped out. And most of the buildings have been condemned by FEMA and all these other things. But you see that all over the place. I think the big thing that this is going to do, and maybe you could call it a silver lining, maybe, and it sucks to say considering like what a tragedy this entire thing was and the immense amount of human loss, like human life that was lost as a result. But you've got all these folks out there that are like, you know what? I'm going to have a Starlink in case this happens. I'm going to make sure that every police department, every, home that's a volunteer firefighter, every fire department has a Starlink. And that's just one thing. Maybe there's some people out there that are considering, you know what? I think I want to have well water. Maybe I'll get a well. Maybe I'll get some solar panels for my house just in case like the power goes out and I don't have to worry about this, that, and the other thing. Maybe I'll get some chickens. Maybe I'll get some chickens and start getting my own eggs. Maybe I'll grow a garden. Maybe I'll have a garden out in the backyard or something like that. Maybe you get a greenhouse, because I think the idea, like you said, like, and obviously you just came from the homesteaders, the big homesteader festival. So I know you're all in, and I'm all in too. Believe me, man. Like when I finally retire, I plan on doing all that stuff. I want to be as self-sufficient as possible so that no matter what, I can depend on myself and be self-reliant, but also so that I can be like other people like around me can like rely on me if like need be. Yeah. And I think building those strong community structures is going to be integral, especially for a lot of these folks going forward as they start recovering from this thing, because I mean, they see what a devastating impact it has if you don't have anything available to you. And obviously like there's going to be exceptions to that, because if your whole house gets ripped off the foundation along with all your property from a river, there's not a lot you can do about that. But there is some things that you can do at least to be prepared, and being prepared is valuable. It's not like, hey, I'm a doomsday prepper. I need to have a bunker. I need to have an armory and all this stuff. It's like, no, I maybe just have some basic necessities, like maybe be able to have my own well, maybe be able to generate some of my own power. Maybe I should have a generator in case the power goes out and I don't have solar panels. Maybe I should have some animals. Maybe I should have some ways of getting food in case like I can't get to the grocery store. Like maybe I should have an ATV in case my road gets washed out and then I can drive down the mountain without having to worry about my car bottoming out or something. Like there's a lot of different things that I think people are going to be thinking of as a result of this. And like that's like the silver lining, like I said, again, to a tragedy. There's not anything you can do to prevent what's happened, but I do think that it's going to be on people's minds.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get down to brass tacks. Guys, you need clothes that actually fit you. I know you've been told it's not a big deal. You're just covering up what God gave you. And who cares if it really fits? I'll tell you who cares. The lady in your life. She cares. Now, ladies, if he's unwilling to capitulate to these demands, well, then you may have to take matters into your own hands. That's what my wife did, and she went to True Classic. And it started off, the gateway purchase was a pack of tees, because let's face it, they do some really good deals when you buy in bulk. So she got me about 5 t-shirts, and I thought, what is the big deal with these things? And then I put it on. And then I went to the gym, and I was like, oh, this thing fits where it's supposed to fit, and maybe hides some of the areas I'm trying to improve on, right? That's the magic of True Classic, right? It's the sort of thing that, your average red meat eating guy who likes to go to the gym or is kind of a casual person can now finally wear something that actually fits him instead of whatever crap he was buying at a box store somewhere. So trueclassic.com/Nick. You're going to save a lot of money when you bundle, because it ain't just about the t-shirts. They got the fitness gear. They got hoodies. They got jeans. They got shorts. They got the best button downs I've ever worn in my life, right? So go over to trueclassic.com/Nick. Guys, get some stuff that actually fits you. Ladies, get some stuff you don't mind taking off them. trueclassic.com/Nick. Yeah. Well, and I know like Justin and Rebecca Rhodes, who have done a lot for the homesteading community, and they live just right outside of Asheville. We were at their place gosh, a little bit earlier in the year, and they lost a lot as well. But like to your point, it's like there are certain disasters where it happens. You can't do much about it. But
Yeah.
if you are set up to be to set up, not just complete independence, right, but a certain degree of resilience. Sometimes that resilience that you've built is for you, and sometimes that resilience you've built is actually for your neighbor. When they're in need, and now you're in a capacity to be able to assist them, and I think there's a lot of those are the sort of things that I think build community to a degree that cannot be replicated by just another government program.
Yeah.
When one of your neighbors comes to your rescue, or somebody from your county or whatnot comes to your rescue when you really need it. I noticed this on something like I'm not even beginning to compare this to, anything that was just experienced in North Carolina, but I know at times in my life where things got difficult and someone came in to help. It didn't create, even though I might have qualified, especially when I first got married. I was a private in the Army. My wife had just moved out to North Carolina. We didn't have any money, right?
Yeah. I mean,
and there were other
privates
times.
don't make a lot of money.
Yeah. There are other times where like struggling. It was amazing how when somebody came in to help you, you didn't feel a sense of entitlement. You felt a sense of gratitude, and you felt this desire and to want to reciprocate and to help back and to be able to be there for somebody else. And I do think it builds like a tremendous sense of community. My wife, her house got flooded twice when she was growing up in Northern California. One time, somebody else had to grab her. She got separated from her parents, grabbed her, threw her in the truck. They're trying to drive out of the canyon as quick as they can. Water's starting to come in. The truck stalls. They got to get rescued by somebody else. And it was that idea of neighbors helping one another. And sometimes it was even people that didn't know each other. It's just, hey, you're another human being. You're in help. I'm here. I have the means to assist. I'm going to do it. And I do think that there's something truly powerful about that I don't think can be replicated by just coming up with a better government program or a better government process. I think this whole idea of intentional community and living your life in such a way to where you're not trying to seek this self-reliance and isolation to others, but a greater capacity to take care of the people that you care about and to take care of other people when they need it. And it was just incredible to watch people both in North Carolina and the people that flooded in to assist with that. It really was. It really was a powerful story to come out of this that in some weird ways kind of kind of reinforced my faith. I have a lot of difficulty having much faith in the political process from time to time, even though I'm an elected official, or having faith sometimes in the federal government and what they'll do. But it is always amazing to watch people that just care about other people and decide to stop what they're doing and assist in any way that they can.
It really restored a lot of my hope in humanity,
Oh.
and a lot of my faith in humanity, because especially in today's day and age where there's a lot of polarization, there's a lot of division in the country, right? There's been a lot of division for probably, the past, since 2008 to 2016 and up until now, and all that stuff didn't matter when people were dying and people were starving and people were thirsty and people need medicine and people need shelter and people need heat. Like, nobody cares who you are, what you look like, who you pray to. They don't care who you voted for. None of that stuff matters. There's just a bunch of people trying to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went out to Avery County Airport at one point. We were flying around in a helicopter doing airdrops in all these different spots. And we landed at the Avery County Airport to refuel this helicopter and drop off some supplies. And I spoke with a lady in the back. They had like an aid station with like 3 doctors and multiple nurses back there and a ton of medicine. And it was like a no joke, like almost like a casualty collection point, but for like a community built one. And they were giving out free like B12 shots, which, and all kinds of stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like they were there to do like house calls. They're there if like people came off the mountain and they needed some help, like some urgent care help. They had that set up. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. And there's a lot of veterans and a lot of like folks that serve out there. Like the guy that was leading the charge at the Avery County Airport was a Ranger bat guy that got out a while back. And then like his kind of like, I guess if you want to call him like the second in command, another dude that was like running the show was a prior lieutenant colonel who got out of the military. and they were just crushing it. They had like all these big boards up with logistics plans and numbers and points of contact and places they visited, and like, we need to do a wellness check in all these places today, like all that stuff. And it was very organized. And
Yeah.
plus they had like tons of shelving set up everywhere, a very good distribution hub where people could come and pick stuff up and people could drop stuff off.
So these guys weren't
I was
government
impressed.
officials or first responders, anything like. These were just members of the community.
Yeah, just members of the community. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I mean, there was like 82nd Airborne, 101st guys out there, National Guard guys. They're out there crushing it too. They were doing an awesome job. I never saw any FEMA folks, but I also didn't go into the city. So from what I understand, the FEMA was staged at the mall in Asheville. That was like their big staging area, and they had like showers and porta johns and all kinds of stuff set up there. A lot of these smaller communities, like the smaller towns out in the middle of nowhere, it was all self-sustained, all community driven, the whole thing, other than maybe the military being out there and stuff, doing airdrops and small contingencies of soldiers around.
Well, and it was great to see both the 82nd and the 101st, being deployed for something like that, because you look at some of the terrain here and there was just no way to access it. I was talking to some people that were down there that have been first responders from Southwest Virginia that were going down and saying, oh yeah, you got to points where you might get 45 minutes in to go into where you were going, and then it's a washed out road and you're not going any further, and you got to go all the way back and then try to find a different route in. And so the chopper support that was coming in from the 101st and 82nd, I know was absolutely invaluable. I had some people asking me, they're like, I got some friends that are concerned because all of a sudden there's guys, running around and they're armed and they're, patrolling into, rural areas. And I said, okay. They're like, well, why didn't they identify when they did? I said, okay, well, again, remember, the 101st and the 82nd Airborne is not disaster relief, right? These are guys these are combat soldiers. They're probably, a lot of them are probably infantry, and they're probably doing their best and they want to help. But they're also trying to make sure, because like you said, there were groups out there that were doing, bad things in the midst of disaster, just like happens, unfortunately there's always a subset of people that look at this as an opportunity to take advantage. I said, but
a lot of junkies.
Oh,
a lot of junkies doing that. Yeah. Especially up in the mountain hollers and stuff. The funny thing is most of the communities like know who all the junkies are. They're like, oh yeah, that's Larry. Yeah. Just don't trust that guy. Don't give him anything. Don't talk to him. It's pretty funny in that regard, but
yeah. Well, my in-laws, my wife's parents, again, they lost their house twice in a flood, and then they live in Paradise, California. So when the fire ripped through there, they lost everything again. And I keep telling them, like, this is California telling you they don't want you anymore. Why don't you come out to Virginia and be closer to your grandkids? But
come out to Virginia and be in a freer state anyway.
Yeah. Well, another
gun
thing,
laws.
Another thing too that they experienced was they had a lot of people flood into the area. So after the fire's taken care of, they've kind of done all the search and rescue. There was a lot of people that, and again, just regular people engaging in some incredibly heroic acts to save people, to get them away from the fire. You had first responders, you had just off-duty nurses and doctors. And again, just incredible stories of people like going really above and beyond in order to help their neighbors out. And one of the frustrations they experienced was, as soon as they got through that part, and now it's about, rebuilding, all of a sudden there was a bunch of aid and there was a bunch of resources coming in. And then all of a sudden people started flooding the area that were not from there, that had not lost anything in the fire, but that's where all the benefits were. And then all of a sudden you see these encampments coming in, and there were people that legitimately were just there to exploit the fact that there were resources available. And it was another area where it's so important for communities to be able to, work with these organizations that want to help, work with government agencies that want to help, in order to make sure that the aid and the support is going to the people that it's intended for, instead of people that are trying to exploit a bad situation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's funny. Funny you should say that. There's the one, at least for the one place at Avery County Airport, they had a pretty good vetting system set up where they were like sending somebody from the operation out to the house, make a house call, make sure they actually genuinely need it. If it's like generators, for example. Generators are very hard to come by up there right now because they go like hotcakes. As soon as one comes in, like I brought 6 generators up with me, and everywhere we dropped them, they're like, yes, we need that right now. Like when we landed at Avery County Airport, we brought 2 generators in that I brought up from Wilmington, and they went out the door like the second they got there, out to some elderly couple's home that was on oxygen and they needed power and stuff like that. So they're vetting these people before they even give like these high dollar items.
Yeah.
The ones that they're not as big on is like if they just need food or water or
Sure.
something like that,
Yeah.
they don't go as much detail. But like the things that are really important that are like life altering, they're trying to do at least some sort of mitigation to make sure that it's going to the people that need it the most.
Who's they?
Um,
When you say
the
they're
folks that
vetting?
were running the Avery County
Got
Airport,
it.
like
Got
the
it.
the civilian folks that were out there running that operation, and I believe it was the same out in like Barnardsville. I also think it was the same in Marshall as well because they had a pretty tight ship with just making sure that like the more valuable things that were being given out for like life sustainment
Yeah.
are going to the people that actually need them and not somebody that's going to like take it and then sell it on eBay for
Yeah.
twice the price
Yeah.
or go sell it because there was people doing that. Like I heard stories about people like pretending like they needed it for something and then they would take it and they would sell it to somebody else for twice the price to make a profit or something like that.
Yeah.
Or they would be able to sell it and just make a huge profit because they didn't pay for it because it was given to them for free.
Yeah.
So like you said, like there's always going to be some bad actors that try to take advantage of situations like this, but for the most part, I think most people out there were trying to do some good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for all the work you did out there. I want to shift a little bit to the fact that it was surprising because when we first I was following your pages, I didn't realize initially that you were still on active duty.
Yeah.
And again, when I got out of the military in 2009, when I first went in, social media just really wasn't. I remember having my MySpace page in like 2007, 2008, and like, what is this social media stuff? But there was no concept of being an influencer, right? That wasn't a thing. And by the
Yeah.
time I got out, okay, then social media really picked up and whatnot. But what is it? So what is it like being on active duty and having a very significant social media presence? Is that something like, cause I can only imagine like what your command thinks, like, are we like, oh crap, what's Kagan going to say? Or what's he going to
Yeah.
involve in? Because the more things become politicized, the more difficult it is to be able to talk about things without somebody getting, upset or frustrated. And especially in the position of being active duty military, we have restrictions. We don't, active duty doesn't have the same freedom of speech that your average citizen does when it comes to commenting about things. So how do you navigate that?
Uh, Very carefully. it's
I've
it's
avoided talking about certain things on this because I don't want to get you in trouble.
oh yeah, no, you're good. I mean, the deal is like, just being in like the current affairs and current event space and paying very close attention to what's happening in the world, like in politics. Like I'm pretty keyed in, or at least I like to believe that I'm pretty keyed in on stuff. And there are certain subjects I typically just don't discuss on my platform for that very reason because it's too inflammatory, or I may have a lot of very strong personal opinions about certain things, but I just if it's something that I think is like this is a little too inflammatory, I just won't talk about it.
Mhm.
And I, honestly, like my command has been overwhelmingly supportive of what I do because they see that most of the stuff that I'm putting out there is either like open source intelligence reporting stuff
Yeah.
to like raise awareness and keep people in on like current events and current affairs, or like military technology developments, like the war in Ukraine and the things that we're seeing over there, because that's like the future. Like drone warfare is going to
Yeah.
be the future for sure. And then I try to talk about stuff that's like giving a positive light to things like, oh, it's the Marine Corps' birthday or it's the Navy's birthday, or like there's a specific historical event that happened in history and military history where this battle occurred, and like maybe talk about that. Or like things that are important, like things that are raising awareness about, stuff that's affecting veterans and active duty, like the the way that they're revising. There's a new, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head right now, but I did talk about the way that the VA was going to be revising the way that they look at how people that are on 100% disability can collect VA benefits, and
Yeah.
the complications for that. Discuss that kind of stuff. I try to do work with Hunter Seven Foundation anytime I can because they're a great organization. They do a lot of stuff that's like related to exposure related illnesses and cancer and research. And they give out like I think Chelsea, the founder, was telling me that they're spending like six figures a year just in research and doing free cancer screenings for veterans and
Yeah.
active duty. And each test is like $1,500 or something like that. And they're
Yeah.
doing it for free for anybody. Actually, Chelsea was out at the site with us with her husband, and also another individual that's with their organization. They were out there at the Save Our Allies spot where we were staged for a couple of days, and they actually did some wellness checks, and they're currently doing a fundraiser for that right now for a lady out there and a family out there. But great people. Just like the way that I have been able to network with people in the veteran and active duty community has been massively impactful, and just being able to like raise awareness about stuff that's important to us, help people, whether it's mental health related stuff, whether it's like, medical related stuff, whether it's like anniversaries for certain events that happen in history, like
Yeah.
all that stuff. But again, my command's been pretty supportive of me. Um, I've had to have some conversations that were a little uncomfortable because, I mean, of course, like the bigger your platforms get,
Yeah.
you get a lot of haters, right? And
Sure.
I've got no shortage of that. And, I've got harassed by a couple different people in the past. And
What do people get mad at you about? Because I mean, again, active duty, you're not allowed to be partisan, right? You're not allowed to be partisan. Yeah. It's not like your content is going in and talking about, the presidential election or things of that nature. So what do people hate on you for?
Dude, I don't know. I think it's just, there's no way for me to, I mean, I could speculate, right? Speculate is probably all I could do, but there's probably just some people out there most of the time. And I think Joe Rogan does it the best, or he says it the best, is he's like, hurt people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't probably make that up, but a lot of people said that, I'm sure. But I think that's probably the case, is just people that have like got things going on in their personal lives. Maybe they're not happy with the way their life is going. Maybe they're not feeling like they're as successful as they should be. Maybe they feel like I don't deserve any level of success that I've gained, however limited that may be. And I'm not like judging how successful I am. I don't think that I've been that. I still don't feel like I've made it at all. I feel like I'm just in this, like, I'm like tunnel vision, like head down in the trenches, trying to like scrape what I can together to build this thing. But I'm sure that because I remember before I started, like, I remember seeing folks that had like 1 million, 2 million followers, and they were just like posting nothing but like, clickbaity stuff that's just like not doing anything to help anybody, but maybe like scantily clad stuff, whatever, you know what I mean?
Thirst trap stuff. And
just not really doing anything to help people in any way. And I used to just get so mad and be like, why does this person like have such a big platform? Like, why do they deserve that? I don't do much of that anymore because first off, I don't have time because I'm too busy focused on like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then second off, it's like, it doesn't make me feel good to be hateful towards people, even if they're hateful towards me. So I typically just keep that kind of stuff to myself, or I just like try to let go of it as best I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to say, man. I mean, there's a lot of unhappy people out there, and those are usually the people that are probably the most vocal in negative ways on the internet. And nobody hates on the veteran and active duty community more than the veteran and active duty community. Like, we eat each other alive. You know what I mean?
Oh,
but
man,
at the same time, nobody cares about us more than we do as well.
Yeah.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
it's we recently had Daniel Gade on, and Daniel Gade, he was involved he worked in the Youngkin administration with respect to Veterans Affairs here in Virginia. Before that, he'd worked in the White House. He was a tanker, had his leg blown off.
Oh, Jesus.
And I think it was 04. I can't remember, but he ended up staying in the military and retiring as a lieutenant colonel, and then got again very active with respect to veterans issues and veterans administration and whatnot. And it was interesting because we had a really hard discussion, a difficult discussion about the way that the VA runs, and it wasn't this typical let's just dump on the VA. It was more of this idea about understanding the perverse incentive structures that are set up within some of these government programs, and how there really has been a big push, and some of it's probably political and maybe ideological, but a lot of it too is good people with good intentions doing things that hurt more than it helps. Because I know when I was getting out of the military, we had people that, I had friends that had been seriously injured, and I only did a couple of tours. I didn't do as many as some of these other guys, 4, 5, 6 tours. And, those guys are saying, hey, look, I'm good. Right. And then you got other guys that are getting literally chaptered out of the military. Didn't engage in combat, didn't do anything like that. They're getting out and they're trying to get 100% disability. And these are not guys that were hurt. They're guys that are trying to game the system. And Daniel and I were talking about how, we actually have an obligation as veterans to look forward and say, hey, look, you deserve everything that you were promised when you joined. You deserve the benefits that you are entitled to, and nobody should begrudge you any of that. But by the same token, you should not allow yourself to trade your honor for a paycheck or a disability status that, brother, you don't qualify for. Yeah. And unfortunately, there is this push by some within the VA. There's push by some, and I think in some cases it's kind of a concentrated effort to turn veterans into victims. And it's like, brother, we don't treat us that way. We are not the island of misfit toys. We volunteered, and there's a certain element of that of being again. I want the fact that serving in the military, I want that to always be seen as something that's respected and honorable. And it's why too, it's so encouraging in something like a natural disaster like Hurricane Helene, where people are hurting, and you show up and there's a retired lieutenant colonel and a retired Rangerback guy, and they're putting those same skills to use, those same capabilities that they had developed within the military. They're putting it to use in order to serve their community. And I honestly believe that's something that one of the biggest things I've had buddies struggle with is when they got out of the military and they went into the civilian world, all of a sudden they're in an environment where they don't feel like the same sense of honor is there, or they don't feel like the same sense of people having each other's backs and being willing to sacrifice for one another is there. And it becomes this difficult transition. Because let's face it, we don't want them transitioning to a point where they no longer demand that sense of honor and loyalty and have purpose. I mean, we want that to be kept. We want it to be reflected in the environments that we transition into. So yeah,
I got an interesting story about that. Actually, I saw a lot of retired or guys that were former Marines, a lot of guys that got out of the military. A good friend of mine was up there for a while. His name's Joe. And, he was one of the founders of, Operation Allies Refuge Foundation. He was at the evacuation of Hamid Karzai International Airport in 2021. Wow. And, the interesting thing he told me, and I don't know if he's going to be upset with me sharing this or not, but I'm going to share it anyway, because I think it's very powerful. He said, you know what, man, like helping these people and seeing what they're doing and getting in the mud and helping them clean out their houses and helping do welfare checks. He said, I feel like it's helping me heal. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's helping me heal from these moral injuries that I have. Yeah. Because, it's like a newfound purpose, like a lot of guys get out of the military. They feel like they lost their purpose. They feel like they lost their way. They feel lost. They feel like they lost their pack, their pride. They lost their, their team. And it kind of brings a lot of guys back together. I mean, I saw guys from that were OIF vets that came down, guys OEF vets that came down, and it really, the camaraderie just was out of this world. Like guys working together to help each other, help victims of a storm, helping fellow Americans, helping people, find food, helping people get the help that they need, doing wellness checks on people, helping people clean out their homes that have been wrecked from rivers that rage through them, all that stuff. And it brought a lot of guys in the veteran community, active duty community together. Saw a lot of folks on leave up there, same as me. A lot of folks took leave. They're like, I'm not going to get orders up here. Well, I'm going to take leave and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do something about this, because if I can do something, I should.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you appreciate what we do here? Because we appreciate you. But would you like to be a little bit more intimate with the Making the Argument team? Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird. I'm just saying there is an opportunity to join our intentional community. And within that intentional community, there are additional benefits, because it turns out that membership has its privileges. In fact, a lot of the episodes that we decide have been decided by our membership. We also have monthly meetups that you can participate in with Tina and myself, where we just exclusively sit around and talk about things you're interested in, to include answering your questions for hours, right? If you're interested in any of that, you want to be a part of the live audience and actually have your questions prioritized on all of our podcasts, go over to Circle, go to the link in our description, consider joining our community. We have different membership levels for any budget, and you are the people that get to help shape the direction that this show is going to be going into 2025. So head over there, join up, and we will see you as part of our intentional community. Yeah, I was talking to somebody that they were looking for how to get connected with certain people because that's what they were doing. Their command supported them, but they were essentially, they were kind of up to help with relief. And I think you're right. I think there's been this idea, I think, for a lot of combat veterans, especially ones that were engaged in really heavy, persistent fighting over an extended period of time, where there's this idea that what they need is to feel supported and loved and okay. But I think my experience with a lot of these guys and the way I kind of personally feel is they want a noble mission.
Mm-hmm.
And when they can actually see that, yeah, that's a noble mission and that's something I can use my skills, my capability toward, and I can do it with other like-minded people or people that had similar experiences. I think you're absolutely right. There is something there's something therapeutic in that, and there's something that, quite frankly, masculinity is, I think, been under concerted attack by the arts and entertainment, by academia. And they always like to, again, they'll launch all these attacks and they'll come back and be like, oh, well, we don't mean all masculinity. We just mean that. Like, well, you didn't say that, or you didn't clarify that when you were making your broad-based statements about how horrible men are until there's a disaster. And then who do you want? Well, it turns out you want the same burly men that you've been calling toxic for the past 10 years to show up and be the ones moving mud and saving people and putting themselves in dangerous situations. And, again, it's all of a sudden it's in vogue again. It's in fashion again to be that sort of man when there's a disaster and when the, kind of this facade of a nice, easy, relatively safe life is ripped away. And those are exactly the sort of men that you need to show up and do stuff. And I do think that noble mission is something that a lot of guys are missing.
Yeah. And it's not to say that there weren't women out there doing the same thing, but you definitely there's a lot of guys that were just like, there is a security element in these like little small like mountain hollers and stuff like that. And like, obviously, like if you want to stop looters, have some big, strong dudes that are armed standing around with a sidearm, and everybody was open carrying. Everybody.
Yeah.
So that it was relatively safe, especially around the supply depots, because there's everybody's armed. Like I heard there's like kids are armed and stuff. You know what I mean? Like they're not playing games. You know what I mean?
Rural America, baby.
Yeah, man. These people are the salt of the earth, man. I'm telling you, like every single place we went, and I was telling this guy, buddy of mine, Dean Goebel, who works over at Black Rifle. He works for their philanthropy section. He became a good friend of mine. I met him actually in Atlanta at the Military Influencer Conference, and then he linked back up with us with his wife actually. And we were flying around all over the place. And he's like, man, every time we land, these people try to offer me food everywhere we're going. He's like, you guys hungry? Brother. You guys want something to eat? They're salt of the earth, man. Like the great, awesome Americans. Like it just makes me so proud to be an American and live in this country and just be around people that are just good people. You know what I mean? And it's again, it just like, it really restored my hope in America. And like the type of people that we have, like what's the word for it? American exceptionalism. Yeah. You know what I mean? It really restored my faith in the belief of American exceptionalism. And I've never let go of that hope because I like to feel like it's still there. But it really definitely restored that,
Yeah. No, it was funny. Because I obviously do talk about a lot of things that are political and controversial and whatnot. But yeah, that was one thing. And discussing with people on this whole idea, this concept of American exceptionalism. Of course, there's a whole group of people now that think that's arrogant or overly nationalistic or whatever else it is. And I'm like, I just don't care.
Honestly, I just don't really care, honestly. Like I love good Americans that just want to do good for other Americans. I just think it's great.
Well, and I love the fact, Margaret Thatcher said that, most countries in the world were formed by history. America was formed by philosophy. And there's this element of truth that America is not just a geographical location. It absolutely is. We're a sovereign country, but there's also a unique set of values and ideas that that were, maybe not originally thought of here, right? I'm not claiming the concepts of freedom or, free markets or property rights or individual liberty or limited government. I'm not saying that all of those were, but a lot of those ideas coalesced in one place that was very, very dedicated to giving those ideas a shot. And it has been a rallying point for people all over the world to want to either come here or aspire to be like us. And that's what's so wonderful about American exceptionalism, is that it isn't rooted in race or ethnicity. It really is rooted in a commitment to a certain set of ideas. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the political because it's important, or we get caught up in the other things, that all of a sudden when a tragedy strikes and now it's all, all the superficiality goes away and it's about what are you going to do in this moment, that you do see that element rise to the top, and people coming from all over the places or all over the place and assuming personal responsibility to help out people in need because they're fellow Americans, because they're fellow people that you care about. That really is pretty special. But
yeah, I mean, there was guys from Canada down here.
Yeah.
Straight up. But my second to last day there, I met a guy who we had stopped. We landed in this softball field out in Burnsville, right out next to this church. And we went down into this fire department, this like volunteer fire department. And there was a guy, like a lineman from New Hampshire down there. Wouldn't have known he was from New Hampshire. He had a huge beard, looked like he could have been from around there for sure. You know what I mean? And he gave us a ride up to this old lady's house that we were doing a wellness check on, and talked to him a little bit. He's like, yeah, man, we've been down here. He's like, man, the people around here are so nice, dude. He's like, they're way nicer down here than they are in upstate New York when they lose power. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, the people out here are the salt of the earth, dude. But it is incredible. Like you said, there's a lot of folks that came together, and that's the silver lining of this whole thing, man. The community and, people being inspired to help out their fellow man and woman and child in a time of need when they needed it most. I think that's something to be proud of as a country, like that. These are the types of people that live here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, Kagan, thank you very much for giving us the time, brother. And thank you for all the work you did out there. Thank you also to guys like Tim Kennedy, Save Our Allies, Samaritan's Purse, and all the organizations that you have been assisting with and helping and using your platform for, because it's definitely made a difference and an impact on a lot of people down there, and you can just see it by the response. So let everyone know where can they follow you and on what platforms.
Well, first off, again, I appreciate that, man. It's very nice. I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you having me on to talk to me and like have this conversation. It's been really nice. This is the most I've talked to you, I think, since we've been texting. So it's been pretty cool, man. Yeah. But yeah, if people want to find me, I mean, you can either Google me like Kagan Dunlap, or you can, my YouTube is Kagan.Dunlap. My TikTok is Kagan_Dunlap. And then my Instagram is Kagan.Dunlap as well. I also have an X, which I'm trying to build. It's been a little harder, but that's Kagan_M_Dunlap. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, to all of our audience, go there, check the guy out. Has a lot of really interesting content, a lot of really interesting insight on what's going on. And obviously with his military background, knows what he's talking about in these areas. And then again, whenever you find someone that's willing to build a platform like this up and then use it to the assistance of people that really need it, not waiting around for other people to do stuff, but taking personal responsibility and ownership over doing that's a good thing. And that's the sort of thing that we need to encourage more on social media. Yeah, we got to talk about a lot of controversial stuff. There's an entertainment value in all of this as well. But when you have people like Kagan that understand the value of the platform that they're building in order to not only uplift the sort of values that we care about, that make for strong families and that ultimately make for a strong country, but then can be used to be able to help people that are genuinely in need. Kagan's done a great job with that, and I think that needs to be rewarded. So go on there, follow Kagan, help him get those X numbers up even higher. Kagan, best to you, best to your wife. Thank you both for your service, both in uniform and, again, what you do on your platform. Once again, thank you everybody very much for watching. Make sure you go into the comments. Let us know what you think about this. Follow that. And then also consider joining our Circle community. We're going to be rolling out even more with that at the end of this year and going into 2025. We've got some exciting stuff in there. And again, Kagan, hopefully we'll see you more in the future.
I hope so, man. I appreciate you having me on, man.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next episode.